C'è Maicon che chiama palla, dategli la palla a Maicon, quello c'è un gran destro, attenzione, la palla per Danielino, Danielino, un anno e 3 mesi che aspetto, un anno e 3 mesi che sto aspettando sto gol, è da maggio del 2012 che sto aspettando sto gol. Danielino, un gol straordinario, mi ricorda quello che ha fatto a Siena, un gol straordinario, è inutile che piagni Sabatini, un gol straordinario Daniele De Rossi, il gol.
Hello and welcome to the first Roma Press podcast. This is going to be a season review from the 13-14 season. I'm James Goodison, I'm production and content manager at Roma Press. I'm also joined by Daniele Lasoni. Hello Daniele, how are you?
How's it going, guys? Good to you?
Yeah, I'm great. And Daniele is a contributor for Roma Press as well as many other news outlets. And then we also have the owner of Roma Press himself, John Solano. John, how are you doing?
I'm good, James. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. So we're starting off today with effectively a season review. Obviously, it's been a pretty good season for Roma. Definitely one of the best in most recent years. And we're going to be looking at not only the past season, the best performers, the best goals, the best signings, but we're also going to be looking towards the future because next season looks very exciting as well. We're hoping that this podcast will be relatively weekly, more or less, discussing the games next season. We're definitely going to do another one after the World Cup to discuss Roma players and how they performed in the World Cup. Of course, and that'll be very interesting. Well, especially as we're actually almost through the first week of games, and we've seen some good performances already, haven't we? With Pjanic and I think Gervinho got a goal, didn't he? So it'll be interesting to see how that continues, and we'll see in the next podcast. But for now, we're moving back to the matter at hand, which is Roma's season. So overall, honestly, if you would look back at this season, do you regard it as a successful one? Just as a bottom line start.
Yeah, I'd say so. Coming in, I think the goal was to get back to Europe. They did that. Whether that was Europa League or Champions League, I think it got a little more defined as the season went on. But I don't think you'll find anybody who would call this season, especially coming off last season, who would call this season anything other than good or any other positive adjective.
Yeah, I can see you. Daniele, do you agree as well? Because I think, like most Roma fans, if you told them, would you like second and Champions League at the start of the season, if you told them that, they would have definitely taken that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, after coming off, what was it, 3 disappointing seasons after Ranieri, and then you had Luis Enrique, and then you had Zeman. I think any Roma fan would have even taken third. I think at the beginning of the season, the club were saying that the goal was just Europe in general, Europa League. But I think deep down they all knew the importance of getting back into the Champions League, especially with a new stadium being built and the need for those kind of funds. So, I think any Roma fan would have snapped your hand off if you had offered them second place at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I mean, it was certainly impressive to see all of that sort of develop, especially throughout the season. I was incredibly impressed by Roma's performances in the early outset as well. I mean, I can't even imagine how many clean sheets was it in a row. Was it 7, something like that? 7 clean sheets to start the season. The defence really was a solid grounding, but obviously it's a tremendous success, especially coming off of, as you said, 3 disappointing seasons, and it was almost, perhaps imperative that Roma got back into Europe because of, like you said, the new stadium being built and all money problems, etc. But how do you think this season was as successful as it was? What I mean by that is, was it mainly just down to Garcia and his tactical nous? Or was it the fact that 2 or 3 players had just outstanding seasons generally? What if you had to pick one thing? What would your standout reason be why Roma did so well this season, Daniele?
If you had to pick one, I suppose it is a mixture of a whole lot of factors, but probably I think everyone would agree the biggest factor is Rudy Garcia. I think after coming off a season where you have Zeman, who's defensively inept, it's always, I suppose it isn't difficult to improve the Zeman side defensively, but I mean, he had 7 clean sheets in a row, like you said, after the 3-1 win over Parma in the beginning. He had about 7 clean sheets in a row, which is very impressive. I mean, we conceded 1 goal in the first 10 games that we had the 10-game win streak. So it wasn't just that he improved it; it's that he set records at the same time. So I think if I had to pick one factor, I think it would definitely have to be the arrival of Garcia.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, if you're able to see this, the type of season that he was able to get out of players like Gervinho, Mehdi Benatia, I don't think anybody would disagree that Garcia was easily and more likely far and above the main factor as to why they had such an outstanding season.
I mean, it wasn't only Garcia's. I completely agree with both of you, and perhaps like one of the main factors is his purchases as well in the transfer market were a great sort of an asset, because all of them seem to perform really well as well. Don't you both agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is the best market that they've had in years. I can't remember one where they had nearly every single purchase come in and make such a huge contribution.
Yeah, I agree exactly. I mean, I was quite from over here in England. It was very sort of a strange. I wouldn't say strange actually, more of a sort of a light, mildly interesting thing that Roma had bought Gervinho. Gervinho had been absolutely dreadful for Arsenal for the past, I think he was there for like 2 seasons, maybe 3 seasons, but he'd been absolutely awful. And then next thing I know, when I switch over to Serie A, it's just been scoring goals, creating chances. It's such a different player. And Benatia, of course, has been a great defence at the back as well. But obviously, I think it was, did you say 10 wins in a row at the start? Do you think
Right.
perhaps that's it's title-winning form, and I think Roma have finished second. Is it six times since they won it? In fact, it's the anniversary today, isn't it? That they won it, 2001.
Right. Yep. 13 years.
Yeah, 13 years. Yeah. So why do you think, or firstly, do you think it kind of fell apart? Or do you think it was just a case of Juventus, obvious favourites, being slow starters, and Roma just not being able to keep up with them?
Yeah, I think Roma just didn't have the depth needed that Juve have. And I mean, rightfully so. Juve is coming off a season where they won 2 consecutive Scudetti. So obviously they're going to have more weapons, or they're going to have a little bit more depth than Roma. We saw what happened right around November when Roma had all those draws. I think we all kind of knew right then, once Juve took the lead, that Roma were going to have a tough time catching up, simply because 1 or 2 injuries like we saw to Totti and Gervinho. It was going to be difficult to catch back up to Juve, who have a much deeper squad than Roma have at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, every year after Juventus won their first title, all they did was they focused on adding depth. I think our market was more to build a strong core after those 3 disappointing seasons. So I don't think it's a surprise. Like John says, I think they just purely had more depth. I don't think Conte's necessarily much better than Garcia. I don't think both starting 11s are that different in quality. It's just when they had to turn to their bench, they had quality. They had someone like Marquisio who they could bring on, who wouldn't even start in their midfield. We had to bring on someone like Michael Bradley, with no disrespect to Michael Bradley, but he wasn't what we needed. And I think that's why in this transfer window we've been carefully trying to add depth rather than the core players.
Right. I think Danny hit the nail on the head. If you look at the starting 11s, I know we can, people can bicker back and forth about this as they choose, but I mean, in terms of quality, I mean, is there a tremendous drop-off between Juve and Roma? In my opinion, no. It's when you look to the bench, Juve have guys like Marquisio, Ogbonna, while Roma have Again, no disrespect, but Rodrigo today. So, obviously big discrepancy in terms of quality beyond the first 11 that Roma just seemed to lack.
Yeah, it is true. I mean, you see it throughout the footballing world, where squad depth really comes into it around Christmas time, especially in England as well, with Manchester City trumping Liverpool in the end, perhaps also due to squad depth there, perhaps as well. But what do you think? Building on that, I agree. The squad, when it's set out, the starting 11 all fully fit, that is a very, very dangerous squad. And I agree, players coming off the bench aren't as good as Juventus's, and certainly won't be as good for teams in Europe next season. But when that 11 are playing, it really is joy to watch. What do you think, perhaps, were the sort of best performances by the Roma team this year? If I had to personally pick, I'd probably say in the Coppa Italia, the 1-0 win over Juventus. But of course, we have some others in there as well. The win over Lazio in September, the 3-0 trumping of Internazionale, maybe the 2-0 win over Napoli as well. But honestly, what do you two think? Which out of all the performances you watched, which one was your favourite to see?
For me, I would have to say winning on the road in Milan at Inter. The last couple of years, Roma have, as bad as they've actually been able to handle Inter pretty well. But that was a match that many were touting as Roma's quote-unquote first true test after the hot start. And I'll admit, I didn't think they'd win in the fashion in which they did. 3 beautiful goals. And the counter attack that they had where Florenzi finished it off, I mean, that was just textbook, in my opinion.
I think I'd go for the first derby that we played after losing the Coppa Italia, when we finally got revenge against Lazio and Balzaretti scored that goal and then just burst out in tears. Couldn't believe what he had done. I suppose for performance-wise, I suppose it wasn't the best. I suppose it was the 5-0 against Bologna, which was maybe better. But in terms of best game of the season, I think I'd still go with the 2-0 against Lazio in the beginning.
Yeah, I see it. I can see both merits on that. And you said about Balzaretti scoring that great goal in the derby. There was actually a couple of weeks ago, the official Roma account tweeted about who do you think. What do you think Roma's best goal was this season? It's very strange not to see Totti on one of the most picked, but the 3 which really stood out were Pjanic's goal against AC Milan later in the season. I remember watching that game. Balzaretti's goal in the derby and De Rossi's goal as well. Are any more that you think you would include as your favourite goal, or alternatively, I mean, which out of the 3 was your best goal for Roma this season, in your opinion?
Danny, you take this one first. I have to think. I don't even know. There were so many good ones.
I'm just trying to think. You'd have to help me, John. But who was that bicycle kick of Florenzi's against? Was it against?
That was Genoa. Yeah,
Genoa. I think that was probably the best in terms of skill. I mean, that was amazing, that bicycle kick. But also, even maybe Pjanic's goal against Verona in the beginning, where he chipped the keeper out, from, it was midway into Verona's half. It was quite a distance that he just chipped the keeper. Or that Pjanic goal against AC Milan. I thought he was Maradona-esque. So those are probably my 3.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to pick 3, Florenzi's goal absolutely has to be on there. In terms of importance, obviously, Gervinho's goal in the Coppa Italia against Juve, that would certainly make it. But I'd also have to go with De Rossi's goal in the opener against Livorno. I mean, that was a screamer from outside the area. And he rarely scores. So, I mean, to see him connect with something like that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, certainly. I think I'd probably have to go for De Rossi myself as well. Moving on from that, obviously, so best goal. If you're listening to this podcast and you have a differing opinion on what your best goal in your opinion was for Roma this season, feel free to tweet us. Is it AS Roma Press, isn't it? So feel free to tweet us there and let us know your opinion. But what about best signing as well? for the Roma side this season. Obviously, as well. I mean, we talked about earlier how nearly all of them made a fantastic contribution. I mean, even Nainggolan, who came in January, didn't he, as sort of a replacement, an improvement perhaps for Bradley. Made a good contribution. I remember him scoring the only goal. It might have been against Cagliari, actually. I'm not 100% certain on that. But I mean, who do you think overall, out of every signing they made? I mean, Gervinho, Bonacci, who was the best signing for you?
I mean, this is the difficult one, just because I think for everybody that was signed, maybe the only one who failed to make a big of an impact as we had hoped was Yaich. So if I had to go with terms of just importance, performance, I think it has to be Many Benatia.
Yeah, I think if you consider transfer fee as well, I think I might go with Maicon, actually, because if you remember, Manchester City pay half his wages for 2 years, so even next season Manchester City will still be footing half of Maicon's wage bill, and to consider we're getting Manchester City to pay for a player like him, it's quite incredible. I thought he was great. Obviously not the best player, but I think considering the financial aspect as well, I think he was a bargain, along with De Sanctis, I suppose.
Yeah.
Right.
And that of course that actually leads quite nicely on to overall best performer, because as you said, even though Maicon didn't play, like, wasn't the general outstanding performer for Roma this season, he was probably the best, like, for what we got in terms of signing. I mean, yeah, you're right, still paying half the wages. Silly how much money they really have, to be honest with you, to throw away in that case. But overall, who do you think was the best performer for the season? I mean, was it the captain again, Francesco, or was it perhaps De Rossi this season? Did he have a good season? Big Lino helping out the new defence sort of gel at the start. I mean, what do you think?
I'm actually going to go outside the box on this one. Actually, I think it was De Sanctis. We haven't had, an effective goalkeeper here in years, and considering just how poor the goalkeeping performances were last year. I mean, you had Mauro Goicoechea, Stekelenburg, and then before that we had Donny, we had Giulio Sergio. I mean, to just have somebody that you can put back there, and you're not worried each time the ball comes in the area that he's just gonna make a meal of it. It's very reassuring. Yeah,
I think De Sanctis is actually, we'd have to probably get one of our followers to double check this, but I'm pretty sure he set the Serie A record for clean sheets this season, which is I think about 23 clean sheets, which is the record he broke Buffon's from the first Juventus title winning season. So yeah, Morgan De Sanctis was probably one of the best. I probably would have gone with Strootman had he not gotten injured. But I suppose, considering his injury, I think probably the most consistent was between Sanctis and Benatia.
Right, yeah. I mean, they were just total rocks all season. I mean, the only real error, I guess you could say, and it was an error, was De Sanctis totally spilling the goal against Atalanta that would have given Roma the win. But other than that, I mean, no glaring errors or mistakes really come to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting to listen to your choices of De Sanctis. I remember that record. I mean, like, when Buffon said, it was sort of like, no one can really catch up with that, at least not for a while, because of Buffon's just. But no, he had a great season, really. Overall, I remember seeing, I can't remember who tweeted it, but saying that he'd really stepped up and shown, his current ability. Because I'm not 100% certain on this, but when he was signed, was it a well received signing?
No, I mean, in Napoli, he was always known to be prone to a lot of errors, and I mean, initially a lot of people were really hesitant on it, myself included, and I don't know if Danny was, but I mean, nobody could have seen this coming.
No.
Yeah, I think a lot of the think he was actually taken quite badly, the signing, amongst at least on Twitter, I remember. But I think that was because the Roma hierarchy knew that Martin Stekelenburg was probably going to leave. I mean, he almost got sold in that January. And so we all thought, well, Roma have got 4 months to find a very, very good goalkeeper. And they brought us 35-year-old Morgan De Sanctis, who was prone to individual errors.
Right.
But it turned out quite well.
That actually builds quite well onto our next point, which is Roma's future. This De Sanctis, of course, is quite old. I'm not sure I'm not sure what they'll do if they do. I doubt they'll do anything this summer to replace him. Maybe one more season or something. But there's also, of course, Francesco Totti. Obviously, this season has seen Zanetti retire at last. One of the greats, of course, and I actually think Di Natale said he was going to retire, but now he's put it on hold, which will be good to see him maybe one more season. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, but how do you think the future's looking in terms of how are we going to replace Francesco Totti when he leaves?
I don't think it's a matter of replacing directly. I think it's more of finding someone capable to have as much of an effect on the game or on the match that Totti does. I mean, they can look wherever they want. They'll never find another player as good as him that has the same qualities. As far as who that might be, I think that there might be some players in-house, Pjanic and Florenzi come to mind, as to who has the capability to improve and have more of an effect on the match that Totti does, but replacing him, that's never that's a tall task.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. It will be interesting to see how some of the players in the next season step up to that role as Totti slowly sorts of winds down. Well, I say wind down, he did almost. I mean, there were calls for him to go to the World Cup this year, which would have been interesting to see.
Yeah.
But Danny, what do you think about, as we were saying before, De Sanctis? He's 35, 36 now, maybe looking at retirement. I mean, he's no Buffon in terms of whether he'll keep going. Who do you think's on the radar to replace him? If not this summer, but maybe next summer it will perhaps be more likely.
I think he's got probably one more season on his contract, and probably I don't see Roma renewing that again. But he seems to have quite a lot of faith himself in the young Polish goalkeeper Lukas Skorupski, who played in the Coppa Italia this season. I think he's quite good. He's very he's got cat-like reflexes, and I think that's really a good asset. But I think we should give him a go. I think we should try an in-house replacement rather than splurging on the foreign goalkeeper.
Okay. What about perhaps? I don't know the situation of Perin. What do you think about? Is it Perin, the third choice goalkeeper at the moment with the Italy squad? What do you think about possibly him stepping in, or do you think he's going to be snapped up this summer?
No, I think he's going to Milan, or maybe one of. I think he's going to stay at Genoa for the season being. I mean, I haven't really been following much, but I know Milan, they've been very hot on his tail. I mean, if there's one young goalkeeper I would want Roma to go for, it would be Scuffi of Udinese.
Oh, yes, he seems to be quite good.
Well, I think I saw the rumor, I don't know if it's on Calcio Mercato, Tutto Calcio Mercato, or if it was Di Marzio. I don't want to put words in journalist's mouth, but I'm sure I saw a 20 million euro offer for Perin from Bayern Munich. Well, how reliable that is, I don't know, but yeah, I think Perin will either move to. I see Juventus have a lot of young goalkeepers that they own, so I don't think they'll go for him. But perhaps his future is actually outside of Italy.
I'm not sure if I buy into that. Because I mean, Manuel Neuer's not he's quite young, isn't he? Relatively young. I think he's in his mid-20s.
He's under 30.
Yeah. So I don't know whether Perin would even want to go there. But I mean, it's interesting. See all these rumours. But
yeah.
Moving on from the future of players, what about the future in competitions? for example, we're in the Champions League next season. I think we're seeded third. Which means we there could be a group of death. I think for us in there. It'd be very interesting to see the draws on that. And obviously, you can't really predict too much until you actually see the groups. But if we're predicted third seed, I personally think that we're better than third seed. Perhaps if we get a low second, a pretty low-rated second, we could maybe qualify for the knockouts and go further. But what are your hopes and then your expectations for next year in the Champions League?
Go ahead, Danny. You take this first.
Well, I think we could actually fall to fourth in the fourth pot if some qualification go against us. I think John will maybe have to confirm, but as far as hopes for the Champions League, I'm quite skeptical, to be honest. I'm not certain we'll get out of our group. But even if we don't, it's a lot of money and good chance to show off some of our best players. And for me, personally, I prefer domestic success. I'd love to win the league again, and then we can focus on Europe after that. I don't know how John feels.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the way it's outlined, Roma are in pot 4. So with that, that means they have the potential to draw Madrid, Dortmund, or Liverpool, which all three of them I would say are pretty strong squads. But I agree with Danny. Are we going to make it out of the group? I don't know. I think anything less than that would be pretty disappointing. I would hope we can make it out of the group, but I think now you're going to see this season. You're going to see Juve making a real push in the Champions League. So with that in mind, they might slag off a little bit in the league. So I think if we're going to win the league, this upcoming season is probably the best opportunity.
Yes, of course. I was going to move on to Serie A hopes, but yeah, I could see that as well. I think perhaps, I mean, it all depends on investment from the other teams around you. But I think turmoil. It seems at both Milans, poor investments. Napoli's probably the only side which could maybe challenge for higher than third. I mean, they could be a sort of direct rival if Juventus do push for the Champions League. And I think you're right. I think they'll qualify out the groups this time, and I think it'll be interesting to see because their crunch time for the Europa League, in my opinion, came when they had already wrapped up the Scudetto. So it'd be interesting to see what it's like in January if they're drawn against, Bayern Munich or Manchester City or somebody like that. How that will work, and I agree they could suffer for that. So I agree. I think Roma should really focus on Serie A and then just treat the Champions League as sort of a way to get money. Maybe fall into the Europa League. That wouldn't be too bad if they actually decide to take it seriously. At least for our coefficient points, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to see. I mean, the Coppa Italia as well. It really, like from my point of view, winning the FA Cup is a massive thing for mid-table, slightly higher table sides. Perhaps like Arsenal won it this season, meant at the hell of the world to them because of obviously not winning a trophy for 8 years. But it seems to me since starting to watch Italian football, the Coppa Italia isn't anywhere near as important, even for mid-table sort of sides. I'm not really sure if that view's right, but would you want to push towards trying to win the Coppa Italia?
I would, just because they're at 9. If they win their next one, they get a silver star, which is basically a dick measuring matter amongst fans. But just for the star, I say, yeah, you might as well go for it, especially if they're going to have the depth this year. I mean, Juve, when we faced them in the Coppa Italia and knocked them out, they didn't put their strongest squad. I mean, they still put out good players, but Buffon didn't play. But I think if they're going to go for it, you might as well just go for it this year. I was very upset when they decided to sort of give it up a little bit to Napoli.
Yeah, I remember at that time, actually, I think both of us, John, you and I, were quite upset with Garcia not rotating the squad enough, not playing the strongest players in that semi-final clash against Napoli, because we could have really... We've had two seasons in a row where we really could have won the Coppa Italia and gotten... We should actually have 11 Coppa Italias by now. So I think if circumstances allowed, I think, push hard for the Coppa Italia. But I'd also like to stress that qualifying for Champions League next season is worth up to 30 million euros more than it is for qualifying for this season for every club. So qualifying for Champions League next season will be even more crucial than ever, and I think it'll ultimately create a gap from the top three to the rest of Serie A.
Yeah, I think Danny's right. If we got to understand priorities here, priority again has to be qualifying for the Champions League. Especially after this season, I don't think there will be any excuses if they fail to do that next season.
Yeah.
Should we take some questions from Twitter? We've got quite a few coming in here.
Yes, certainly.
I'll just fling them around here. We've got one from Glenn, who asks, what is the status of the stadium? Haven't heard much in a while, so I can answer that. The last I heard was that the owners of the land where the stadium is supposed to be built, they've gone into bankruptcy, so it affects the sale to Roma and the group the consortium that Roma are with in buying that land. And apparently a final decision will be made at the end of the year, but the Americans do seem quite confident of it going ahead, because they're already selling, they're selling season tickets for the actual stadium. They often advertise it on Twitter. And then maybe I'll give this one to John. Is there any truth behind the rumours of Darmian to Roma? That's from Libero Molinaro. When do we expect some movement on perhaps the fullback position?
Okay. Is there truth to the rumor? I have not heard anything personally. I have not been able to reach his agent. I've actually tried, but I wouldn't expect anything to happen until after the World Cup is over. Even with players that aren't in the World Cup, Luis Muriel being one of them, I don't think anything is going to happen until after, just because that's when valuations most likely are going to skyrocket or plummet based on the performances. But as far as Darmian goes, I don't know anything personally. I don't see why Roma wouldn't be interested. It's certainly a position they need. I can confirm that Roma are interested in Santon. I have spoken, but this was months ago. I have spoken with Santon's agent, who coincidentally also happens to be the agent of Mattia Destro. So I do think that they're going to make an upgrade at left back or fullback. As to whether it'll be Darmian, Santon, or even Ricardo Rodriguez of Wolfsburg remains to be seen.
Yeah, I think just one thing. I think Walter Sabatini may just steer away from World Cup players, especially because they're going to have unrealistic values to them if they have a good World Cup. I mean, if Darmian puts another 2 good games in, and Torino try and milk clubs for him, I think Sabatini's rational. I don't think he'd get involved in a bidding war or pay exorbitant fees.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
And then I'll pass this one on to James. Obviously, we remember what all of Benatia's stunts a few weeks ago, speaking to the press, saying every player dreams of Bayern Munich, Man City, etc., etc. Just from a footballing perspective, this is from Ed Spino. Can Benatia redeem himself to the fans and be Roma's third captain once again after all this summer's drama? Do you just think it's possible in footballing terms? How does a player come back from this?
I think fans are fickle. I mean, especially from my point of view, you see. Perhaps even when Kaka was sold to Real Madrid and he's come back to AC Milan and greeted like a hero, when people make comments during the off season, for example, Ravel Morrison for West Ham was a great young player at the start of the season, played a couple of good games, had a bit of a falling out with the manager. Sort of agent made a bit of noise and he was shipped off on loan to QPR, but I'd have him back in a heartbeat, even though I was annoyed at him halfway through. Perhaps it's a bit different in Italy because of the ultras. I mean, we all see it.
Yeah.
The rest of the world gets a very bad view of it, really, from Coppa Italia. But I think yes. I think a couple of standout performances. I think a couple of big goals. Although I know that's not his, I know it's not his forte, but I definitely think he can be back in Rome's hearts. It may take a season or two, but I think the ultras are an extreme case there because they are a minority, unfortunately, the loud minority. But I think the rest of Roma fans, I think most would see it as simply this was my agent's plot to get me a better contract. And it was just done very, very poorly, in my opinion. Yeah, but I don't know. I think it will take a season or two, and maybe he needs to kiss the badge. But it's symbolic stuff like that. I really think he's not going to let his performances drop or anything. He sort of seemed to have gone into hiding, gone a bit quiet since all that sort of kicked off. And they certainly haven't been making any more noise. Manchester City have been completely rebuffed, so I don't think he'll move. And I don't. I do think he'll win back the fans. But in terms of signings as well, we asked a couple of questions last week when we were going to talk about. We were going to do the Roma podcast, but then we sort of we all sort of lost track of time. We have one from Theoren at Theoren91. Who asked which position, in your opinion, needs to be reinforced the most in the off-season, and who do you think are most likely to arrive? Obviously, we've already had Seydou. Is it Keita? Is that how you say it? The ex-Barcelona player who was at Valencia last season, which really adds to your point, Daniele, about them bringing in depth for next season, and perhaps to a degree Champions League experience is great as well. But who do you think? What position needs to be strengthened, and who to sign on the off season?
That's probably the easiest question of the podcast so far, because I think both John and I will agree it's left back, where we have Balzaretti, who's out with a serious injury. Dodo got injured in this post-season friendly tour of America. Torresidis is a natural right back. He can play left back, but it's not ideal. Romagnoli is a natural centre back. He can play left back, but again, it's not ideal. So I think left back's the most important area.
Yeah, I'd say left back as well. Balzaretti, we don't know what his status is with. He had that hernia, and then there were some complications arising from the surgery. And then Dodo, he goes out. Romagnoli, obviously, as Danny said, he's a natural center back. Who, to be fair, he didn't do bad at left back, but obviously we prefer to see him at his natural position. I think left back and also a winger are extremely important to bring in. I think with Keita arriving, Yukan coming over from Turkey, I think we're pretty well covered at midfield. That's also not to discredit Leandro Paredes, who's also on the side. But yeah, I'd say left back and another winger is a definite need for the market.
I agree with you as well. I think left back is definitely the weakest position, and then overall it's just sort of a case of adding depth, as you said. I also have another question here from Jerry Updike at Fixture Wire on Twitter, who asked two questions actually, but the second one's really intriguing. But the first is, do you think Roma actually have a transfer policy in itself, or do they take it on a case-by-case basis? Obviously, this is you could look back through different eras of coaches and managers and the like, directors or whatever. But I mean, overall, right now, do you think it's a case-by-case basis, or do you think they have a policy?
Well, this is actually interesting because we actually had another question from Twitter from Razi Hanafi, which tweets that there are so many young talents being brought into Roma with so little opportunity. I think yesterday we confirmed the signing of Silvio Anocic, another youngster. But yeah, I think the general policy would be to bring in youth players who can add utility, who can actually be useful at the same time, while at the same time bringing in veterans like Maicon, Sanctis, Keita, who can bring immediate strength of mentality and immediate utility as well.
Yeah. And
John?
John, what do you think about all of that?
Yeah, I agree. I think if you can have a nice mixture of youth and veterans, it really helps the process in terms of consistency, especially when those veterans it's time for them to hang it up. But as far as the transfer policy goes, I think it's a case-by-case basis. I mean, we've obviously seen that Sabatini isn't hesitant to cash in, but I think if you go back to last summer, if PSG only would have offered maybe 10 or 15 million euros for Marquinhos, I don't think he would have moved. So I think it's all on a case-by-case basis, but with the policy being sell them for big money, which is why when you see rumors of Strootman moving or you see Benassia moving, it's all got to be worth it for Roma. I mean, we've seen rumors of Strootman being rumored to go to United for 25 million euros. Well, Roma just paid 20 million euros for him. That makes zero sense. We've seen City supposedly bid anywhere from 20 to 25 million euros for Benassia. Well, Roma paid nearly 15 if you want to include the players of Lopez and Vere. So it's all got to be worth it for Roma. Do they have a policy? Sure, in a sense, but in my opinion, it's all on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. And then touching on your idea of youth, Jerry also asked the question, do you think it's wise really to sell young players overall, even if Roma's evaluations of them are met?
Oh, that's a tough question. Danny, you take this one first.
I think every player has his price. So I think if Man City offered me 60 million for Benatia, I would take it. And if Man City offered me, if every player has his price, so even Destro, I know a lot of fans maybe wouldn't want to part with him, but for the right price, anyone can be sold, except for Totti and De Rossi. I wouldn't sell them, or Florenzi. I think those are untouchables. Other than that, I think everyone else has a price.
Right. I mean, every player, like you said, has their price, has their valuation. The way things happened last summer, obviously with the outcome of this season, it was good in the end. But when we initially sold Lamela and Marquinhos, I was very much questioning Sabatini's motivations. What is the direction? What is their policy? I mean, both of them were very young, very talented. They're only going to get better. But like Danny said, every player has their price, and if Sabatini thinks those prices were met, then so be it. We'll sell him, and he's proven more than worthy that he's able to replace young, outgoing talent with just as good, if not better, talent.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think the last question we have here is from Libero Molinaro Jr. So, congrats on the Twitter name. Talking about potential signings, in this case, this was asked 11 days ago, the 6th. About what do you guys make of potential reported signings such as Ucan and Iturbe? It seems like that the Verona winger is likely going to move to Milan, probably if they sell Balotelli, in my opinion, because I don't think they're going to open their wallet for him. But what do you think about, like, I mean, Iturbe now doesn't look like he's in the picture, but what do you think out of those? Ucan, for example.
Ucan, he'll arrive. It's just a formality now. The player, because it looks like Iturbe, is becoming farther and farther from Roma. I'm going to think a little outside of the box on this one. I've posted it a couple times just because I've talked with his agent, but I'm actually coming around and becoming more receptive to the idea for winger Luis Muriel. I spoke with his agent. I posted it on the website. He said, "Yeah, in my informal negotiations, no, we're listening. We're always talking." But just the way we were speaking, he made it sound like Roma was more than open to bringing Muriel to the capital. And I think everybody sees the promise that he shows. He had a terrible season this year. He wasn't fit. He was injured. Then at some points he wasn't able to get back into the team. So I think if there's a player that we go for that can go forward, that can play on the wing, he can play central. He's got great speed for how out of shape he is at times, but I would love to see Muriel come into the side because I think you're not going to be able to get him for much cheaper than what he is now. And I think he fills a need. And as far as left back goes, I've always been a Davide Santon fan, so I'd love to see him come into the side.
What about you, Daniele?
I think Ucan will be almost certainly a Roma player by next week. Iturbe, I've kind of gone off the idea since seeing the quoted fees for him around 25 million euros. I think it's a bit steep for him. I'm sure he'd prove it to be worth that much, but it's a bit of a gamble considering. I mean, he had a good season. He didn't have a great season. I'd actually rather go for Muriel as well. Although also rumours of Churchy, I don't know if I like that idea. I don't know if he fits Roma's idea really because he has no resale value. I mean, he's 27, almost 28, 2 good seasons. He's 30. You won't get your money back for him. And I think I suppose it's not the only thing Roma think about when buying a player, but I think it is a big portion of it. Rather get a young player who can do just as good immediately and then still be able to turn a profit on him.
Yeah, I'm. A lot of people want Churchy. He's a good player, but as Danny said, what's his resale value? He's virtually going to have none if he signs for 3-4 years. That's why I'm big. I'm very big on the Luis Muriel signing. I know many won't. I don't think many will see him as a great fit, but in terms of ability to grow, he's going to improve. He's still relatively young. And the fact that he wants to come here, he's admitted he wants to come here. And like I said, when I spoke to his agent, Helmuth Wennen, he was more than open to coming to the capital. So I think with all those factors, I don't see how Roma could lose on a deal like that.
Yeah, I agree that those signings do look relatively promising. On another note, the new kit was announced a couple of weeks ago. It went down very, very well. Even across my timeline, some of my friends in England who never follow Serie A were extremely delighted at it. It looks great. One of my favourites, and I love the photo shoot from the Colosseum. Any clues to when the away kit's going to be announced? Because I'm very interested to see whether or not it has the traditional Roma logo, or whether it will go for just the wolf's head, which I would honestly prefer because I'm a massive fan of that. Do either of you have any ideas?
Danny?
I think it's supposed to. These are just reports, but I think it's supposed to debut only on the American tour, which is mid to late July. So I think we'll probably see it by then.
Okay, that's interesting to see because, of course, it'd be good to grab both. I think trying to figure out who I want on the back, probably Pjanic and Totti, the standard Totti. But
if I was you, I would wait till the 31st of August to get the Pjanic one.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that. But so that'll be interesting to see the kit, and of course, it'll be interesting to see next season as well. I've got personally high hopes for Roma next season, and hopefully we'll be able to improve on this one.
Yeah, there's they're finally starting to turn it around, and plus, I didn't really touch on this, but there is a lot of bad money finally coming off the books for Roma with today, and hopefully if we can get Borriello to fuck off, we'd be saving a ton of money. He makes about 4 million net today, makes about 1 million net, and so 5 million in wages saved. That's a pretty good pile of cash that Roma can flash around to potential recruits.
Yeah, certainly. I agree. But I think that is relatively all we have time for. We've done about 50 minutes, which is a lot better than we actually predicted. We predicted we'd be here for about an hour and 20. So we've done quite well to keep it a little bite-sized, and that's absolutely great. If you'd like to put some sort of advertisement on this podcast, please get in touch over Twitter. But it's been a great start. We'll come back after the World Cup for a season preview / review of the World Cup. I'll leave you now just with one more question. Who do you think will win the World Cup?
Ooh, I'll go with my heart instead of my head. Italy.
I'm gonna go with Spain.
I'm gonna have to go Brazil. So it'll be interesting to see how that all pans out, especially as last group games have come. But have a great summer. Enjoy the rest of the World Cup. I've been James Goodison. I've been joined by John Solano and Danny Lissoni. Thank you very much, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Parte Miralem, eccolo il tentativo di tiro, la palla respinta, il capitano tiro, gol! È il gol del Bimbo d'Oro! È il gol del Bimbo d'Oro! È il gol del Bimbo d'Oro! Una sassata del capitano! Mamma mia, una sassata del capitano! Questa volta nulla ha potuto a Buffon! 9 gol in campionato, 224 gol! Nordal ad un passo il capitano, braccia al cielo, tutti i giocatori su di lui! Tutti